Welcome to another episode of Dorm Room Review. This time I'll be taking a look at Mythology Codex by Phill Smith. This is a beautiful book. It basically has all of Phill Smith's work to date. I want to first talk about the design and then we'll jump right in and get into the content, okay? The design is beautiful. Phill Smith is a professional artist. He's a designer. He designs tons of UK magicians and US magicians' books and products. And you can see why. I think this book is a really fun look at his work, because I think this is kind of his free expression. This is him not having to work within the boundaries of what anyone else wants, but purely what he wanted his book to look like. So it's gorgeously designed on the front and back cover, beautifully printed as well. It's really, really great quality. The pages are a really wonderful quality print as well. They have some quotes to kind of start off every chapter, every trick. There's a little start of a quote there. And it's really beautiful, really colorful. There's also some wonderful illustrations, which I'm going to try to find one. I don't want to show one that shows anything, but there's some wonderful illustrations throughout the book as well to both help solidify all of the concepts and the explanations, but then also sometimes just to provide some little fun moments. I'm not going to spend a lot of time going through, but some beautiful illustrations throughout as well. And then perhaps the most impressive thing about this book is the page artwork. And if you've seen anything about the book, you've probably seen this. If you actually take all the pages in the book and bend them downward, you get a beautiful piece of art, which looks a little bit muted on camera for some reason, but in person it is really, really vibrant, really colorful, really dark colors, and you can see it's kind of a mythological scene there. And for some reason it doesn't really show up on camera nearly as well as it does in person, but in person it is absolutely gorgeous. But that's the scene. And what's really crazy is if you take the book and bend it the other way, so that all the pages are beveled the opposite direction, you actually get a totally different scene. So this one is of sort of a, almost looks like a Buddhist creature or something from an Indian Hindu culture. So that's it there. So really beautiful, and this is all created digitally from these little bars of color that go along the entire book. And whenever you bend the pages, it actually creates that beautiful artwork. And apparently Phill came up with the concept and worked out the method to make that happen. And it's absolutely beautiful. I used to always be enamored by the old books where they would actually paint on the edges of the book. They would bend it and paint it. And I've always wanted one, and now to have one in a magic book is pretty special. So that's all I want to say about the quality, because the quality is phenomenal. Now I want to move on to the material. This is clearly a huge book. It contains all of Phill's work to date. There's 372 pages in it. I could spend a lot of time going through and talking about every single effect. I'm not going to do that. Instead, I'm going to sort of hit some of my favorites. Some of the tricks I'll talk about quickly. Some of them I'll kind of spend a little more time with, but just to give you a feel and a flavor of what's inside the book, okay? Also, Phill is kind enough to provide these little tabs as well. So as you read along, you can pull out a tab, stick it on there, label it, and you kind of can help find your spot and mark some of your favorites throughout the book. I haven't done that yet just so I could keep it clean for the review, but I'll definitely be going back through and marking my favorites. So there's actually a trilogy that Phill created: Mythos, Yokai, and Mokli, Mokli. Anyway, I don't know how to say them. They're all myth-based, mythology-based. Mythos is his first book, and it's included. All three of those books are included in here. I'm just going to kind of go through each section, break it down, and just tell you my favorites from that. So from Mythos, Equivoque is a way to use equivoke with a finger, but it's a really lovely reveal. I think it's great. It's simple to do. You can do it anytime. If you have just a moment to write something down, make a little prediction, you can perform it. Left brain, right brain is a really great prediction where a spectator tries to read your mind. They first predict or read your mind and get a number, and then they can get some shapes as well. It's really clever. There's a really clever distinction to make it clear that there's no one ahead being used. And then there's something called atypical hybrid, and this is something that's actually new for this book. In the original Mythos, there was a trick called atypical, which allowed participants to be able to tell details about a party just by looking at the word party written on an envelope, and somehow they were able to sense what was inside of this envelope and what the party was about. Atypical hybrid takes it a step further. I love this. I think it's genius. Whenever I first read through and kind of skipped through the pages, I was like, I don't know about this, but then whenever you actually read the presentation and read how it's set up, it's really, really clever. Essentially, you bring someone on stage and you give them the ability to see what it feels like to be able to look inside of an envelope, basically, to look inside of someone's mind, give them a feeling of what it's like to be able to be clairvoyant and know what is inside of an envelope. And they do it without ever looking, and somehow they get this urge. Everything is super clear. They can tell details, and there's some lovely surprises at the end as well, which make for a great climax. Won't get too much into that, but I really love Atypical Hybrid. Then we have, all throughout all three of these mythology-based books, there is these premises, and it's just these simple ideas, kind of fire starters for how you could present what you do. Instead of just being a magician or mind reader or psychological analyzer, he's giving you all these little things that are take it a step further. One of my favorite is called Mental Conflict. And I'm not going to go into it too much, but it provides you with, basically, it's this old thing where you have your right hand do a circle going forward and your left hand do a circle going backwards. And then it's really difficult to do them both at the same time. So if you try to do this right now, your right hand goes forward in a circle, your left hand goes backward in a circle. And when you try to do them together, it's really, really difficult. Your brain starts to make it not work. But you can actually do it. And it's he uses that as an explanation for how he does what he does. And he also provides this wonderful illustration so that he can actually come back to this anytime in his program. He can come back to this illustration of the two circles, which is really great. Then we have Friend or Foe, which is a really great living or dead test, but he does it with a friend and someone he doesn't know. It's a really great method, really subtle, happens right there in the moment. It's great. It can be done with all borrowed objects. For yokai, the two standouts for me were Serva, and that is basically a group remote viewing project where you have a big group come over, and maybe you're at a party and you all sit down and you attempt to pick up on a drawing that one of your friends has made and sealed up in an envelope. And no one knows what the drawing is. They all attempt to do it, and it's real. They really do attempt to do it. And then lo and behold, they pick up on some of the images, they get some specifics. You have the envelope with you that your friend drew, you take it out, show it, and it matches what they've come up with. Not only that, they call the friend up to talk to them and tell them how it went, and then there's an extra kicker there as well. They're really great. And then my favorite from yokai is the interview. It's a really clever riddle wordplay that's happening on stage. It makes for such an entertaining moment, and then there's just some simple equivoque for the method process. But the value in really all of Phil's work throughout the entire book is his presentation, his hooks. The interview is a lovely hook. It's all done in the concept of an interview, but it's funny questions and it's memorable questions, and it's very, very entertaining. You get a lot of entertainment value out of nothing but a piece of paper and an envelope. It's really, really simple to do, but I think it's great. Then we get to Mokul or Mokul, however you pronounce that. And the first thing that's taught in there that I really liked was the Biz, which is his business card peek. And I had seen it at his Alakazam lecture, and it was very, very fooling. And there's an additional move at the end you can add on, which made it even more fooling. I was totally fooled when I saw it live. So I know the power of this. It's easy to overlook it because it's very simple, but whenever you see it done, it's very, very convincing. And you have to pay special attention to how he times everything out, because literally it's so invisible, it's almost too invisible. That's how invisible the peak is. It's really, really great. Also included is the full Humit effect. If you know anything about Phil's work, you've probably heard of Humit. It's his Liar, Truth Teller coin plot, so you can learn that. And actually, Phil's been gracious enough to provide you with the full download. So if you actually want to watch the download video for Humit, you can get that inside of this book. It's included. The universal principles of design is then brought up, and he kind of uses that throughout the entire book to talk about, relate how the universal principles of design relate to magic and to performing and to presentations and that kind of thing. So that's really, really great, scattered throughout the book. Then you have an effect called Reader's Digest that I really loved. It uses his concept deck. Basically, you get a really large reveal out of a stack of cards with words written on them, but you get a reveal from 3 different places in the audience as they've each thought of a word, and you can tell them their word. But again, it's the premise, it's the presentation, which just makes it really unique and really fun and memorable. And then I just have to mention the CDC drawing dupe. It's so clever because it's pretty much all a farce. It's pretty much all just bold brass. You just almost don't believe that's really the method, but it is. That's the method. It's really fun. I enjoy that. And then we get into the card section. This had a lot of stuff that I think was new. I'd never seen it in print before. Edge of a Whisper is a really fun idea for a spirit revealing a card, but it's a super clean way to force a card, essentially, is what's happening. It's not really a force because it's any card, but it's a really clever process that takes care of that, makes it seem really fair. Then we have Gravity, which is a card location that feels impossible. If he had shown me this, I would have been fooled, no doubt. It is something to take out to the magic conventions to really get one over on people. It's really, really great. It uses a number of combination of principles that make it super, super fair, but it's a really great card location. Then it comes to Florida, which is basically a game you play with a friend that's a little bit rigged in your favor. So you can play it. It's a really fun card game. But the way he frames it's really, really great because it definitely feels 50-50. He has some lovely touches there. Visionary Journey is a reading that you do based on a playing card that somebody picks. So if someone picks a playing card, you give them a reading based on that playing card. And then at the end, you've actually predicted the reading that you would give them. It's a really, really backwards approach. So from a layman's perspective, I think it's really hard for them to backtrack this trick because it's layered in such a way that it just is so backwards for the layman that it's probably going to be difficult for them to reach that conclusion of how you actually got there. I think it's really great, and I think that the prediction comes as a kicker right in the teeth that they don't see coming. And also included in here is Grandmaster Easy, which is Phil's ACAN, and there's a full PDF about his ACAN, and then also some other effects related to that, and even one with DVD cases and envelopes and that kind of stuff, which kind of take the principle to the far extremes. He calls it deep thinking or deep geeking. I can't remember, but I think it's basically deep thinking, where he kind of dives really deep into all these methods to get as much out of it as he can. Then you also have the full passport to marked cards. So if you know Phill Smith, he created the DMC Elites and the DMC Alphas. You get both the passport to marked cards and the passport to alphas in here, which is the little booklet you can buy that goes along with the DMC Elites. But they can be used with any marked cards and any marked alphabet cards. So you get both of those included in here as well. Then we have the Miscellaneous section. I'm actually going to start the Miscellaneous section kind of in the middle of where it is in the book, but there's Quinta. The entire book of Quinta is included in this, in the Miscellaneous section. That's Phil's incredible method for forcing one object out of 5. It seems so fair. It's stupid how fair it seems, but it's very, very good. Works every time. My favorites within Quinta are Transmission Control Protocol, which is done with 5 participants standing on stage. It's really, really large. You get a lot of play. It seems impossible, and it's all done with just a piece of paper and envelope. Super clean. The Universal, which is Phil's method for forcing absolutely anything. Anything you want to force in the world, you can force with Quinta using the Universal method. So great, so easy to do. You can do it anytime, anywhere, totally propless. And also, my last favorite from Quinta was the Gallery, which is something that you perform on your phone. You bring up a photo album, which has some pictures, and 2 people think of some numbers. You scroll through, they remember the picture at their number, and you can read both of their minds, or you can predict both of their pictures, which are both different, or you can read one mind and predict the other, which is my favorite approach. Those are all great. Love Quinta. It's something that you have to have in the memory banks. You can use it for any 5 objects or people or things that you want. Going back to the top of the Miscellaneous section, we have Convergence, which is something really crazy and wacky that I've never seen before. It's a double prediction using Wikipedia. So they pull up Wikipedia on their phone and you get a prediction of it. It's kind of wild, kind of wacky. I don't know if it's something I don't think it's anything you'd ever use professionally, but if you're ever just at a party or hanging out with some people and you think of this, then it's a really fun process to go through. Sometimes it takes a while. I can't really talk much about it. Sometimes it's kind of a long routine, but it's fun, and in the end you end up with something that seems like you couldn't have predicted, but you did. Dressed to the Nines is a lovely, lovely mathematical take on a magazine test. And again, it's the presentation that really does it. The presentation for his magazine test is about people creating images that they've never seen before, and about how our imaginations can see these things even though we've never seen it. And then at the end, the entire audience is creating this image that's never been seen, and at the end you show that you have predicted that exact image that everyone's just thinking that has never existed before you actually created it. And then we have the Interlaced Principle, which is taught in here as well, which can be done with cards, it can be done with tarot cards, business cards. It can even be done with other things that's not playing card related. You can maybe even do it like coins, anything flat. It's a really clever principle. Oh, he also does it with crayons at one point, which I think is brilliant. But it's basically a really smart principle to determine what someone's thinking of out of 8 things. Really, really great. And then also included in the Miscellaneous section is a chapter on resonant contexts. And I just wanted to bring this up because it's something that I will be going back to a lot, and I think if you own this book, going back to the resonant context repeatedly will be very wise. It's a whole section that just talks about different contexts for tricks and for mind-reading stunts and all kinds of different things that really relate to people. Instead of just having someone think of, any 2-digit random number, it provides some context for that 2-digit number, or provides some context for the random thought they're thinking of. Instead of just think of a random word, it's a whole section that just gives you some little ideas of some resonant context, aka context that really resonate with people. I think it's great to have as a resource. We also get Fast Text in here, which is his book test, which is crazy and scientific at the same time. you read it and it doesn't seem possible, and then you try it and it still doesn't seem possible, and yet somehow it works. It's really, really odd. It kind of takes a weird quirk that's in the human brain and uses it to our advantage. It's really fun to perform. It may be even more fun to perform than it is for the person to watch, because it just feels, you kind of feel like Superman whenever you perform it. And then we have Stegosaurus, and Stegosaurus is Phil's, you can get the download on Penguin. It's Phil's solution to a thought of word reveal. I don't know, that's kind of flat. Basically, they think of any one of like 30 plus words. They think of one of the words, they're all 5-letter words, and then they have 10 cards that have the letters of the alphabet scattered over every card. They spell their word out using these cards that have multiple letters, like 13, 14, 15 letters on every card. They spell their word out, and with a quick glance, you can immediately tell them their word. So the first time, it's 3 phases. The first phase is a puzzle. So you look, and then you're able to determine their word. The second time, you're looking away whenever they set the cards up. You do a quick glance, look away again, and you're able to tell them their word. And for the final time, they put they spell their word face down. So there's no way you could get any information, and yet you're still able to tell them their word. It's a really great build in the process, and the method's pretty simple to do, and it's pretty much self-working, honestly. If you can just do a little bit of something in your head, you can take care of this pretty easily. I really like Stegosaurus. I think it's fun. And then the book ends with the gallery, which actually just takes you through some of Phil's work and kind of introducing you to some different decks that he's designed and produced. It talks about the DMC Sharks, the Elites, the Westminsters, the Cutters, the Blue Sky. And so again, it's just kind of him just showing off really kind of his portfolio at the end of the book of all these different decks of cards that he created and who he created them for. And then of course it ends with about the author section. And that's the entire book. That is the Mythology Codex. That is not every trick in the book. That are just some of my highlights. So obviously you may read this book and come out with totally different highlights. But I just listed off, gosh, I don't know, what, 25, 30, 40, something like that tricks. And that is just barely scratching the surface of what is inside this book. If you've ever seen any of Phil's work and you're a fan, you need to have this. It's an incredible tome of his work. Not only that, but it's gorgeously produced. You're gonna have something that is totally unique. It is a gorgeous thing to have on the shelf. It's something really cool to bring out and show friends with these little pages and the drawing that sort of appears magically there. And then the content it's just pure gold. If you want entertaining magic and mentalism, Phil's the man for that. All of his stuff is so entertaining. His premises, his presentations, his context, whatever you want to call it, it's so intriguing to watch. So it works close up and it works on stage. I have learned a lot from reading this book, and I'm going to be going back to it again and again to try to get some more inspiration, because Phill is a man who inspires. If you don't have Mythology Codex, definitely pick it up. I highly, highly recommend this book. Thanks, Phill, and thank you for providing all of your wonderful thoughts and sharing it with the community. It's people like you that we need more of.